Thank you for tuning in to the Give 'em Rugby podcast. If this is your first time here, welcome. If this isn't your first time, then you know there are some people that we have to thank. First on the list, the Cover Podcast Network. They provide all of the production, all of the video, all of the editing that you see on YouTube, and all of the great audio that you hear on your preferred podcast app. We're also proudly brought to you by cardtrader.com. CardTrader is Australia's only online marketplace where you can buy and sell trading card games like Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and also sports cards, NBA cards, NRL cards, AFL cards, NFL cards. They're all available at cardtrader.com. That's cardtradr.com. And if you sign up today, you will lock in a 3% sales commission. That means for the lifetime of your membership, of the time that you're signed up to Card Trader, you'll only pay a 3% sales commission on any card that you sell. Most other auction houses, most other platforms, marketplaces, some of the big ones, you're paying upwards of 12, 13, 14, 15, even as much as 20%. So sign up now. And finally, we are also brought to you by ASICS. Hit the link down below to buy anything you need, all things rugby, boots, apparel, sportswear, golf. They have it. Make sure you use our link because we get a nice little commission and that funds all of the stuff we like to do here. Okay, without further ado, on to the next guest.
Sorry, stop, sorry. I forgot two really important things. To help the podcast grow, we really need your help. You can do this by following our social media channels. We're at Give 'em Rugby on your preferred social media channel. We need subscribes to our YouTube channel. Again, we are at Give 'em Rugby on YouTube. And finally, and probably most importantly, we need positive reviews on your preferred podcasting platform. The more positive reviews we get, the more the show will get recommended to other people around the world who like rugby. Don't forget to join the Give 'em Rugby Club. You can do that at giveemrugby.com. It only costs $5 a month and it will give you access to a whole bunch of exclusive content, access to our guests, discounted merch, all that kind of thing. So please make sure you do that because that will ultimately fund this show long term and help us build out a bigger, better, broader production, more guests, better sound and all those kinds of things. So please make sure you join the Give 'em Rugby Club. Okay, take two, I promise. Now we're on to the next guest.
Look, my line, I get ready. Feeling too trippy, get it cracking like a levy. I'ma show them all how to party if they let me. Keep the countdown and release the confetti. The party don't start till I get there. I sit aside and the rest in it ain't fair. I've been waiting on this moment my whole life. Yeah, give me my crown if it's just right. You make it look good. Watch yourself, huh? Yeah, you make it look good.
Welcome back to the Give 'em Rugby podcast. Today I'm sitting down with one of my favourite players of all time. I do say that about everyone who comes onto the show, but today it's true. I promise it's true. He is, I'm going to see if I can get all of these. He is a Melbourne Rebel. He is a Taniwha. He is a Honda Red Heat. He's a Honda Heat. He's a Red Dolphin. He is a Brumby, a Barbarian, and a Chief.
Yep.
Did I get them all?
Yep.
He is Jack Debreczeni. Thank you for joining us on the couch today, mate.
No, thanks for having me. The journeyman, I guess, when you rattle them like that.
But, you know, it's cool. It's a really kind of cerebral. You've had this really cerebral rugby apprenticeship, I guess, if you want to call it that. You know, is there anything, you know, you played here in Australia, over in Japan, and over in New Zealand. Is there anything stark that kind of sticks out in terms of the differences in the way the three countries play footy or approach footy?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of rugby is it takes you to places all over the world. There's a lot of cultural differences I can immediately start to pick out, especially with Japan.
Yep.
That's very different to Australia and New Zealand. But then there's also a lot of similarities, especially between Australia and New Zealand. I don't think they're that far apart as people think. There's just a few nuances that are a bit different, and that's probably what makes them both unique and cool rugby environments to be a part of. So, yeah, definitely a lot of similarities and also some very stark differences.
Stark differences, yeah. I certainly found I did a couple of years down at the bottom end of New Zealand, University of Otago. When I first got there, it was a little bit of culture shock because that sort of bottom of the South Island accent, I don't know if you've heard much of it, but they kind of roll their R's and
there's a few different words.
And so people would be talking to me and be like, I actually don't understand a lot of what you're saying. I know we're speaking the same language, but otherwise, it was a pretty similar environment. It felt like small town Australia to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think when I did a Mitre 10 season at Canterbury, and the first day I just heard the boys kept saying, how are? I just was like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool place, especially the South Island and North Island, experiencing both. There's also so much difference within the country there as well. The way they play rugby, the way they train, and their lifestyle differences as well. So, it was a cool place to go play rugby.
Have you got a favourite spot of all the places you've been?
Not really, because they all hold different meanings to my journey. So I'd say not really. There's one place that sticks out the most. They were all real integral on this journey of, I guess, your career and where I am now. They all hold a special meaning.
Yeah, I think that's a cool way to look at it. If you can take a piece from everywhere you've been, that kind of shapes the person and probably shapes the player that you are. I know you spent time, backing up some really excellent players. Damien McKenzie's obviously one that comes to mind. Is there any one player or any few players who stick out that you really learnt a lot from? Yeah,
definitely. So I guess a lot of my young growth was at the Rebels. Spent 5 years there. And two players in particular, like Mike Harris and Tamati Ellison.
Yep.
Was huge for me. They played 15 and 13 when I sort of debuted as 10. And they were just like awesome voices to hear outside you. Just helped you a lot with, I guess, game management. And then you got to see them day to day, how to be a professional and how to, I guess, run an attack or speak in meetings. They were just awesome guys to be a part of. And they were great fellas off the field as well. So they're probably two guys that come to my mind straight away. Those first 3 or 4 years in Super Rugby, they were integral to my growth.
Because you were quite a young guy too at that point.
Yeah, I went to Melbourne when I was 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Had you played much grade footy at that point?
I played 1 year.
Yeah.
The funny thing was, the best part was I'd missed the Aussie 20s that year.
Yep.
But it was the best thing for me because I played a full season of Super Rugby, Shoot Shield in Sydney. And a lot of those other guys, they either were in camps the whole year and then played the 4 or 5 games at the 20s and then didn't really play any rugby that year. And I just found heaps of growth in playing against men.
100%.
They toughen you up. There's a few niggles at the bottom of the ruck. There's sledging. There's back talk. You're playing in certain grounds that are tough, wet footy, some in the middle of Sydney winter. So that was awesome, and it was a big growth. And I do put it down. That's a reason probably why I got the opportunity in Melbourne.
Yep.
Because I think I was maybe either me and Alan were the first of sort of that 20 era to debut in Super Rugby.
Yep.
So it was sort of, I guess, a sliding doors moment. I wasn't good enough to make the 20s. But I played a full season of grade in Sydney, and it gave me that opportunity in Melbourne. It sort of kick-started from there.
It's really interesting because I had Connell McInerney on, and he similar kind of career in that he didn't crack it as early, but it took him a while, sort of hopped around a little bit. But he came through that 20 setup, and he said that it was really difficult because of what you're saying. He was in camps all the time.
Yeah,
he was personally carrying a niggle, so he didn't get any rest throughout the year to nurse that niggle.
Yeah.
But he ended up playing a lot of football. So we're talking, half a season of grade sort of Colts footy. Then he played those 4 or 5 games of under 20s, and then he came back and went straight into an NRC season at 18 years old.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's just interesting because there needs to be a fine balance between playing enough footy and the right kind of footy.
Yeah, definitely.
And then getting exposed to that next level. So it's interesting you say that was the best thing for you because I agree. The guys who seem to do really well early get a lot of exposure to grade footy early.
Yeah, well, I think you see even now in certain squads that I've been a part of, there's a lot of guys who are in programs, but they just don't play enough footy. And that's not on them. That's just you're not making the 23 and then maybe club season hasn't started. So there's that period there. And then So there's a lot of guys I feel who awesome trainers, but they need to get more development in games. But like you said, it's the right footy as well. It's not just any game. So that's the balance that I guess Super Rugby teams are trying to find.
And you kind of sought some of that out early in your career too. You know, you had that Rebels thing, but that stint you went to Japan, that was something you intentionally wanted to do, right?
Yeah, the first one was to just, I guess I'd only ever known the Melbourne Rebels as a professional environment. I only had one coach there. So I just wanted to get an experience elsewhere. So yeah, in between, I think it was the 2017-18 season, I went to Japan for 6 months, which was awesome, and then came back for the Super Rugby season.
Yep. And, you know, we talk about the right kind of footy, and I laugh because this will be like the 5th time the NRC's come up on this podcast. But, you know, you played in some NRC. Did that also help your development as well, getting that exposure?
Yes, definitely. I think those first 2 years, and it's what I guess New Zealand has with the Mitre 10, and that's the opportunity that those guys who are your 25 to 35 on the roster in Super Rugby teams, they can obviously get a few opportunities throughout the year, and then that's where they really hone in on what they've learned or what they need to get better at those 12, 15 games at the end of the year. So, yeah, I thought NRC was awesome those first couple of years. Obviously, it's a money thing. Yeah. It would have stayed around if there was more money injected. But I think for the competition as a whole, I thought it was awesome, especially the first 2 years, because I think you had a lot of the middle-aged guys from club rugby actually interested.
100%.
Because it was new and there was a little bit of money to support them. And then as it went the last couple of years, there's just nothing for those guys to be able to give up jobs for 10 weeks of the year to fully commit to those programs. And then I found it dropped off a bit because it was either Super Rugby guys not with the Wallabies and then just young 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds playing the competition. And it probably lost a bit of its toughness.
Because I think that's one of the key things I notice about the NPC in New Zealand is you do get those say 25 to 33-year-old guys, and some guys, you know, that's the level that they play at, and they play a whole heap of footy there. Definitely. As you say, there's a bit of coin there for them to be able to take some unpaid leave or whatever they need to do, and then use the money they're getting from their NPC team to supplement their wage. Yeah, I think you're right. I certainly noticed it here in Canberra. Lots of guys, lots of really good players who were in that age bracket played the first 2 years. Yep. Because it felt like there was a little bit of money coming in, and I think it felt like they were finally getting that exposure to the next level that they wanted. Agreed. And then I know, you know, I could rattle off some names, but a whole bunch of guys turned it down in the third year. So I'd say that's about 2016, 2017, somewhere there, because as you say, they had careers. Most of them had finished uni. They were off doing their job. So they were sort of just happy to play in club footy, training a couple of times a week, and then focusing on that career. So
and I think I could be wrong, but with the Mitre 10, they have a certain number of positions open in Super Rugby sides. They need to, and they allow for that for guys who do well during that tournament. Yeah. And I don't know if that was there for Super Rugby teams in Australia. Like maybe one or two guys got picked up. Yeah. And I think the realisation of that as they got to year 4 or 5 in the NRC, guys were like, well, is it really an opportunity, or are we just playing for the sake of it? Yeah, it was probably one of those things where you had the NRC clubs they all kind of had a different view of what the competition was for. Yes. So was it, for some, I think it was about winning. Yeah. Let's win, so we'll stack with as many sort of super rugby guys as we can. And then for others, I think it was, well, let's use this as a development tool for our Super Rugby team. Yeah. And let's try and give some exposure to guys who haven't had a crack yet but might be ready. Yeah. And some young guys as well. And if we can pepper in, you know, a few of the more experienced guys to help them along, then that's great. So I think we probably just needed some leadership somewhere to go, you know, what is this for? What's the purpose? And then, as you say, having some, even if every club had 5 spots open for NRC guys, not only does that the carrot's there for the player, but I think from a media perspective, that's the story that's constantly being perpetuated. It's like, oh, well, this guy might, you know, this club is saying that
that we like this guy, we're looking at him. Like
definitely.
so you're starting to get that sort of constant media churn on a national competition as well.
Yeah.
So I think we probably just lacked a little bit of. I think everyone knew that we needed to do it. It was just a little bit of just a lack of understanding of what it was for.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that made it really hard to continue on with it once COVID sort of happened, because the money wasn't coming in. There probably wasn't the players. But, you know, everyone I've spoken to wants to play in it again.
No, I think the competition was awesome. It's just how they do it that makes it sustainable.
Yeah.
And I guess you trying to generate a team for people to support out of nothing is always going to be tough.
That's hard too. Yeah.
So it needs to be authentic with the teams they create or who they add into competitions. There's always been murmurs around the top four in Shoot Shield and the Hospital Cup, and then 3 or 4 from Canberra and vice versa. That might be the best way, who knows? But then you struggle with how the players fall into that. So
yeah, it's
a tough one because you were trying to formulate it out of nothing, really.
Yeah, yeah. And historically, you know, the NPC in New Zealand, that was the way that they picked the All Blacks. You know, you had your club footy, obviously before professional rugby, club footy into the NPC and then straight into the All Blacks. You know, Australia really just had club footy. Most of the best players were in Sydney and Brizzy.
Yeah.
And then they might play, you know, a New South Wales v Queensland. ACT occasionally would come up, but it wasn't as organised as the NPC had been. So we don't have that sort of legacy piece to kind of fall back on.
Yeah.
Which I think makes it hard.
Yeah, definitely.
But tell me about, let's go back to the Melbourne Rebels. You know, 1 year in club footy. How did the opportunity with the Melbourne Rebels actually come about?
So my manager was contacted. So back then they used to be, what was it called? There used to be 5 contracts given out, or 3 to 5 contracts given out in the roster to guys. It was almost like academy contracts.
Yeah, it was like an extended.
I think the max you could get, I think the minimum was like 35 and the max was like 60, and they were sort of outside the 35.
Yeah.
So that I just got offered one of those through my manager from the Rebels, and accepted and went down and sort of started from there in 2013 pre-season. I knew nothing about Melbourne. The funny thing was I had actually been in talks with Essendon.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because they went through the drug.
Yeah.
So I think they lost their draft picks.
Yep.
So they had to use alternate talent. There's a scheme in the AFL where they give you money if you get players from, it doesn't come under the cap.
Yep.
If they come from a different sport.
Yep.
So I met the Essendon guy at Eastern Suburbs Rugby Club.
Yep.
Kicked a few balls, had a couple of chats with them, met him once more after that. And then it was sort of the next stage was to go down to Melbourne and do like a 6-week trial, see if I liked AFL, how they liked me, if I fitted it. But the Rebels offer sort of came similar time.
Yep.
And then the funny thing was not knowing, I knew AFL, my uncle was a Swan supporter, but you just live in Sydney, so it's everything league or union.
Yeah.
And then I go to Melbourne and it is
polar opposite, right?
It is like so extreme. Like they do it, they're so addicted to it. And it's crazy. It's awesome. It's awesome to see. They're so passionate about AFL on there. But it was just a funny thing. Like I just knew nothing about it. And then going down, I was like, maybe I made the wrong decision going down to Melbourne.
AFL are not scared to just take a flyer on someone, right?
No.
There's a story. There's a guy in Canberra, Ivan, and his last name escapes me, but he was plucked out of relative obscurity. Like he was playing a bit of schoolboy rugby for Darramullen College, and he might have gone to some open trial thing. Really quite a tall guy, 6'5", 6'6", sort of ruckman height.
Yeah,
big broad shoulders, and they just plucked him like off this field and like, what do you think about AFL? And he was like, whatever. So as soon as he finished school, they put him on, you know, a really low tier contract. So he didn't have to go through that draft process. And that's probably what you're talking about. They probably got some coin for bringing him across from a different sport. And, you know, he toiled away in sort of EFL and the lower tiers. And then, he now has, I don't know, 50 50 caps in the
Yeah.
AFL. Like
Yeah.
they're just not scared to take a flyer on someone.
No, and I remember the main thing about our conversations were around running and the running loads, how different they are in AFL, and the want to run high kilometres in pre-season and during the games. And I think the guy they ended up selecting was maybe a national runner. They were just going to try to teach to kick.
Yeah,
That's such an important part of their game, the running base.
Yeah, interesting.
So it was interesting the type of athletes they were sort of going after.
Yeah, wow. Because I would have thought the kick would be skill number one.
Yeah,
right?
I guess if you can run and tag someone and just follow someone around.
Yeah, well, I guess that's true. Just shadow them. If you can keep up with someone for a whole game, maybe that's a pretty high priority skill.
Yeah, so I headed down to Melbourne 2013 and sort of started the journey from there.
Yeah, wow. And is there, like you sort of mentioned, almost culture shock? Like, was it weird playing professional sport or a professional rugby in a town or a city, not a town, where no one really knew about you and about the sport?
Yes and no. They had sort of a decent following back then. I think Melbourne get around any sporting team quite well.
That's true. Look at the Storm.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. I think it was just weird. Like you just saw so much AFL.
Yeah.
And you just like, we're just light years apart down here. Any other sport.
Yeah.
But it was just weird being in a city that I'd never been to. Like that was first time going to Melbourne.
Yep.
There was no other reason to go to Melbourne beforehand. No family down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just a whole new environment. I'm 20 years old, living out of home, playing professional sport. It was just an awesome experience. I was sort of like, yeah, how good's this? The first year or so.
It's funny. I had a similar moment in the UK. I opened up a newspaper. So it was a while ago.
Yeah.
Newspaper. And there was 15 pages of English Premier League.
Yeah.
Like, turn over to the back, sports section, flicking through. And then there was like half a page on the English Premiership Rugby. Yeah. I was like, what is this? Because in Canberra, the back pages traditionally were Brumbies, Raiders, and then, you would get a little bit of, occasionally like basketball or whatever was going. But it was, hugely rugby focused. So I remember thinking, wow, this is a different sport. And then I went to a game and I was like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
They were just mad. It was a Man U game and they were just mad about it. I was like, this is a different level of supporter.
Yeah, definitely. I think my first AFL game was they generally have a Carlton versus Richmond. They kick off the season on a Thursday, and that was maybe 88,000.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like, this is ridiculous. Like looking around the MCG, Coliseum.
Yeah.
I was like, this is a bit different to what we're getting on the weekends.
And like a different noise, right?
Yeah.
I know, obviously more people, but there's a lot of yelling. There's a lot of stuff coming out onto the field. You don't typically get a lot of that in rugby. There's a lot of cheering.
No, they got their chants. They've got different things that happen in the game that the whole crowd reacts to, whether it's like holding the ball. You hear everyone screaming, holding the ball. When the umpire throws the ball in, they're making sounds. So, I guess they've created a cool environment to go watch the game. And that's what it should be, I guess. Watching a game should have more emphasis on that sort of stuff to make you want to go and not just sit at home and watch it on TV. There needs to be a reason that pulls you to the game. So they've done well to create that environment and atmosphere.
Because that's certainly a challenge. I think all sports are facing it. AFL maybe not so much because there's such a long history of my dad supports this club and his dad supported this club, so I do. So maybe there, and the stuff you're talking about, the fan interaction and maybe because they're so close to the action too, that there's a little bit of back and forth that goes on between some fans and players. So maybe they're an exemption. But I think lots of sports are battling with this idea that for a lot of people, watching it on TV is easier. It's a better atmosphere. It's a better product. I'm in my own house. I'm close to the action. So I think a lot of sports are struggling with that. How do we get the balance right between having a really strong broadcast but also a really strong match day atmosphere and presence?
Yeah, definitely. I think AFL, I reckon it's the only game I know where it's better to go watch live.
Yeah.
because you see people move off the ball and it's 360.
Yeah.
I think, like you said, any like rugby leaguing, and it's almost better watching on TV because it's better angles. It's from above. It's where you want to see close to the ruck. You can hear the ref talking. So yeah, it's a challenge for our sport to how do we make the game more, the crowd or going to the game more inviting for our supporters.
And I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, rugby's too complicated," but AFL is complicated. It is
definitely.
such a complex sport.
Yeah.
If you plonk someone in front of it, and I've unintentionally done this in a bar. I used to work for a basketball program.
Yeah.
And we would often have athletes come from overseas, and we would, take them out for dinner or whatever, and an AFL game would be on the TV, and they would sort of look at it and be like, "What is this sport?"
Yeah.
For people new to it, it just looks like chaos running around after a ball. So I always think that's not the reason people don't go
Yeah.
to go to watch rugby. It's not that it's complicated. It's just there's not enough happening around the ground, I think, personally.
Yeah, I think rugby is a complex game. I sort of call it chess.
Yeah,
And when you understand the rules of chess, it's a beautiful game to watch. And I say like rugby league checkers, like it's pretty simple, but it's exciting, it's fun, and anyone can play it, and anyone can watch and pick it up straight away.
Yep.
So that's the struggle. Is just I guess getting more people to be more interested in chess than checkers.
100%. And I actually think it's more exciting, as you say, when you actually understand it and you're watching it and you're watching great players and the way that they dissect defenses and the way they move the ball. It's like poetry.
Yeah,
it's so beautiful to watch. I watch a lot of NFL and college football, but when I was a kid, when I first sort of got exposed to it, we had Foxtel and there was a game on every week. John Madden was the commentator.
Yeah.
And he was incredible at explaining really complex concepts. They'd score a touchdown or whatever, and he would bring the replay back and actually explain to you the reason he was able to get free or whatever is because this guy made this block, this guy pulled out here and made the other block, and that sprung him free. Yeah. So I got this PhD class in NFL and American football simply by watching and listening to him.
Yeah.
I think that's an opportunity for rugby.
Yeah, I agree. It's like Tony Romo now.
100%.
With the way he explains the games.
Yeah.
And it's that excitement he produces through audio that gets the fan excited about what's about to happen, what may or may happen, and he's explaining to people. I think play-by-play commentary is a gap in the market in rugby, whether it's through lineouts or scrums. I think you can make those more appealing to a novice fan.
100%. Yeah. I had Darcy Swain sit down here too, and sort of we talked a little bit about the things he looks for when he's calling lineouts, and I'm hoping to incorporate some of that into the stuff we do, because I just think it's a real opportunity, and I think once people actually understand it, they will fall in love with the game.
Definitely.
Lockie Lonergan mentioned to me that you've got a really high rugby IQ.
Yeah.
Sort of talking, and he said he liked talking to you, liked hanging out with you, talking footy with you, because you have a very strong cerebral understanding of the game. Is that something that came naturally to you, or did you need to really buckle down and watch a lot of footy to kind of get there?
I think I have always had I think one of my, greatest strengths is I've always had a ability to recognize and understand space from a young age. Maybe I wasn't as skillful back then to get to that space, whether it's a run, pass, kick. But I've always felt like I've been able to see space on a field, whether it's backfield, in the front line, in the back line. But then when it comes to the game understanding, I think I just love watching the game, and I've watched so much over the years. I was pretty much a ball boy since I was 5 or 6.
Wow.
So I've just been around the game for a long time. And then watching footage, back to those two guys, Tamati Ellison and Mike Harris, they just ingrained to me how important it is to watch footage and to understand what you're coming up against. You can't always predict it, but you can put yourself in the best position to be able to react, because pretty much the game of rugby is all about reacting to what you see in front, and without prior knowledge, it makes it really difficult. So, yeah, they sort of ingrained to me early how important watching film is, and I've just sort of stuck with that throughout my career.
But I think what you just touched on it is about reacting to what's in front of you.
Yep.
Shape is important to have a style of play, but the ability, as you say, identify space and get the ball there, whatever way is the most efficient way to do it. You can't do that unless you've seen that picture in front of you a million times.
Definitely.
And probably attacked it the wrong way a few times as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. I had a lot of tough learnings in probably the first 5 years at Rebels that are like, I know what not to do in those situations. And that was, I guess you just have to go through those tough pains. And I think especially as a playmaker, you have to go through that. That's why I feel real not bad, but like I feel for the young 10s that come up from this country. There's just so much pressure after 1 or 2 games. And these guys need to go through those experiences and they'll just be way better for it in the future.
I think it's so tough to be a number 10 in particular in Australia at the moment.
Yeah.
We've got, and you may feel differently, you may feel the same, but I think we've got a pretty special group of young 10s in Australia at the moment. And the way they're being talked about in the media and thrust into every little mistake that they make is under a microscope.
Yeah.
I just think we're doing them a disservice
Yeah.
because, as you say, they need to go through some of that adversity. They need to be in an environment that allows them to make some mistakes on big stages, so that in 3 or 4 years' time, they've got 10 or 15 different pictures of the same thing that they see in front of them, and 3 or 4 ways that they know they can attack it.
Yeah, definitely. But I guess what the media does, as soon as one of them has a good game, they're the next so-and-so, and they should be the 10 for the Wallabies.
Yeah. And I think we just need to really nurture them at the moment. Put them in positions to be successful. So let them go in super footy, make mistakes. You know, having someone like you around who's got that work ethic, I'm sure is going to help someone like Noah.
Yeah.
So if we can do that, around the country, let them loose, and then again, put them in positions with the Wallabies if they play well enough to be successful and build from that. I think we set guys up to fail a lot.
And I think the other thing is you get those guys, if they get to 25, 26, and they're still going through those growing pains.
Yep.
They almost get casted off. And it's like, all right, the next 20-year-old.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he's probably only a year away from really like fully understanding his game. And then he's 27 and he's prime, but we're sort of like, he's not
there yet.
So let's get rid of him.
Because I often think about Ben Smith's career.
Yeah.
He came in early. He got some exposure to the All Blacks almost first or second year. I don't think he played again until he was 27 or 28.
Yeah.
But those 4 or 5 years he played at the back end of his career, he was the best centre in the world.
Definitely.
In my view.
No, definitely. Definitely.
So they just kind of stuck with him. They allowed him to do his apprenticeship, and when he was ready the next time, they gave him that opportunity and he was incredible.
Yeah. I think it's where not the issue, but the struggle with Super Rugby at the moment, it's a very young competition. Like guys expect to be debuting 22 and then get real like edgy if they're not. They feel like their career's over already. And then you go to places like France or England and you can like squads there are probably mid to late 20s is the major age of those squads. So it's just the nature of this competition.
Yeah.
Guys sort of make it a bit earlier, and then if they don't really make it, they get flushed out.
Do you think it's hard for those guys because they aren't necessarily playing enough footy? They don't have that intermediary competition. Do you think that makes it hard for them?
Yeah, definitely. We 16 games in a Super Rugby season.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a sprint.
It's
if you
tough.
compare it to the comps overseas that are 30, 35 days.
Yeah, well, they're getting those, if you're getting the cup games and
there's a lot of rotation within squad. So, yeah, I agree. Like, guys are anxious because they know that there's only a small amount during the year that they can play that high-level footy. Otherwise, it's back to club rugby.
It's really interesting, isn't it? So I look at the French and I look at the English, and you're right. Guys tend to really hit their straps around 27, 28. They just kind of stick with them.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, they might not be around for 10 years or 15 years if you're really lucky. You might get them for 4 or 5.
Yep.
But those 4 or 5, you're not teaching them the game. They know the game.
Yeah.
They're ready.
Yep.
And I think, maybe that's a mistake we're making. And I think too, it's hard too because a lot of guys get get to that age and go, well, I'm not playing for the Wallabies, so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna
Yeah.
go and earn my money.
Yeah.
Which you got to do it because you've only got a small window to kind of do that. So
Well, yeah, I just think, especially in certain positions, like it just takes time. Like even look at like Richie Mwanga, like 7 premierships, but he only really became the All Black starter maybe year 5 and 6 or 6 and 7 of those premierships. Before that, he was off the bench or in and out of the squad, and he's winning comps every year.
yeah.
But it's just like the development they do over in New Zealand, especially I know competition's probably a bit more, or it was for a lot of period.
Yep.
Like you said, we're going to a period now where there's really good competition with our young Aussie 10s. But yeah, I think in certain positions, it just takes a bit of time to develop certain skill sets. And a lot of it comes with learning about different pitches you see in the game.
And I think front rowers certainly fall into that category. Again, I think we've got a really good crop of young front rowers in Super Rugby at the moment. And we need to look after them because it's going to take them, again, till 27, 28, even just for their bodies to be ready for the rigours of international footy, of test matches. You know, you go to the UK, you might pack 30 or 35 scrums if it's raining. You need to be ready for that. So, I completely agree with you. I think we're just a little bit quick to move on to the next best thing.
Yeah, and I think Super Rugby probably doesn't help, especially the forwards, the transition to how attritional the game is in test footy. So that obviously doesn't help also. So, where they get those learnings to be able to play in a cold night in France, packing 25 scrums in a game.
It's tough.
Against a 900-kilo forward pack.
And guys who've front rowers, I admire the French forward packs a lot. I think they have incredible forwards a lot of the time. They've got incredible backs too, but particularly their tight head props, their hookers, their type 5. They're just beasts. They're absolute monsters, and it's because they play a lot. I heard this story where during the season, the front rowers weren't allowed to do squats in the gym. I can't remember which team it was, but they weren't allowed to do squats in the gym because the coach wanted them packing 50, 60, 70 scrums a week in training so that they were ready for the 20 or 30 that they were going to pack on the weekend. So it's that kind of thinking, I guess.
Yeah, and they got the S-Bars, I think it's called as well, which is the under-23 comp that every team pretty much has. So the guys there are just being exposed to a lot more footy. But like that comes down to, I guess, money as well. So it's a tough thing.
It's tough. Everything is about money, and all we hear about at the moment is we're struggling for it. So let's move on to happier things. Do you have sort of an early memory of playing footy, like a favourite kind of early memory of your early days with a footy in your hand?
I know Mum always tells me my first game I was picking grass. I was 3 years old, so I don't think I was.
That's fair.
But no, early memory is just Saturday mornings, like the smell of like fresh cut grass down at the local footy field. I used to wear a headgear, so I used to have a black headgear in my hand when I was like 10, 11. And just, playing with your mates. And then someone getting the Macca's player of the day.
The Macca's voucher.
The voucher afterwards.
So
that's probably like earliest memory when I think back to it.
It's funny, when I smell that mowed grass, I've been retired for a while now, but when I smell that grass, I'm like, oh, I could get back out there again.
You can always play the seasons. It's just the pre-seasons you can't do.
Honestly, that is my nightmare. I seriously thought about doing it about 12 months ago. Before my second child was born. And a friend of mine is the athletic performance coach at the club that I play for. And I just messaged him and said, hey, what's the go with pre-season? Have you got a program I can have a look at? And I looked at it for 5 seconds. I was like, I'm good. I'm not doing that.
That's what when you speak to all the guys about retirement, they're like, I could play another season. It's just the pre-season I can't do.
Love the game, can't train. It's cool though. I think those early the Macca's voucher is such a throwback, but those early memories of playing footy I think are really special. And certainly for me, it was that kind of stuff. It was hanging out with my dad, hanging out with my friends. That stuff's really hard to replicate in the real world. So it's I get really nostalgic just thinking about it.
No, definitely. Yeah, and probably ball boying as well. I used to love going down to my local club team in Sydney, and I'd finish my game, and then Mum would drive me out for the 3 o'clock first grade game.
Yep.
Used to be running down the field. Used to have tea. The teas used to be sands in the bucket.
Oh, the sand bucket. Yeah.
So the sand bucket there, scoop it, run it out to the kicker. He'd drop it. I was like, I can't wait to kick off sand one day. and now we're kicking off silicon tees.
Yeah, I remember the Brumbies maybe did this. Because remember when kickoffs used to be off the tee?
Yep. So I remember the guy at our club, he had a cone this big.
Yeah.
And he sliced it on a 45 so it sat like that.
Yeah.
And he just rocketed it in the sky.
I remember that. Like maybe Joe Roth did it. But same thing. It was like a traffic cone. That's a bit dramatic.
You could almost bring out as big as you want.
Yeah. And they used to kick, and it just used to skyrocket.
I reckon maybe bring it back.
Yeah. I wonder why we got rid of that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe trying to get the tee off the field.
yeah, maybe. But it's funny because I remember my dad. I was watching a game with my dad, and he was like, "Oh, they're not kicking off the tee anymore."
Yeah.
And then it was kind of never spoken about.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I was also a ball boy. I ball boyed. I actually ended up playing senior footy for a different club, but I ball boyed for a club. And I remember thinking those first graders were just superstars.
Yeah, definitely.
Like they were rock stars to me. The Brumbies were here and they were cool, but they were almost unattainable. But just seeing how big they were and how fast it was compared to what I was doing, like I was always in awe of them. And I remember when I played my first game of first grade and looking at the the young kid on the side, I was like, I wonder if he thinks I'm a superstar.
That was like I remember seeing my first 15 team walk past me when I was in year 7.
Yeah.
And I was like, these guys are monsters.
Yeah.
And we're there as little kids. And I had the same feeling when I was in year 12. I was like, I wonder if these kids think we're monsters.
Because the Sydney schools rugby is just another level, right? Like I did the first half of my high school here in Canberra.
Yeah.
And then I went to St. Joseph's College, Joey's, in Sydney. And at that time, we still had to go and watch. It was compulsory.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say had to.
No,
it was compulsory
to go watch. Yeah. That was same as our schools.
First 15. And my first game, so Curtly Beale was our fly half.
Yep.
And he was, like I already knew everything about him before I even got to the school.
Yep.
Peter Beetham, I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I know Peter Beetham.
Yeah, he was the fullback.
Yep.
A guy named Sipa Tamapiao was in the centres.
Yep.
He's played for Tonga now. They just had this incredible team, and it was just I was in awe again at sort of 15 years old. These guys were fast, they were strong, they were skillful, and then on top of all of that, you had all of the boys singing chants and like getting right in on the field. Like it was just an incredible atmosphere. I'd never experienced anything like it.
No, I think it's it's awesome.
Yeah,
to have that in. It's very tribalism about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny in lots of pockets of Australia, but even in little pockets of the world. When I tell people that I went to Joey's, they always either know someone who went there or they went there themselves.
The name of the school is very
and again, I felt the same playing in the first 15, running out onto the field. We used to run out to walk on, which is the pretty famous Liverpool soccer chant. But we used to walk out to that, like tears running down, tears streaming down my face. That's how much it moved me.
Did you beat Riverview in your final year?
No, we lost to Riverview.
That's the big rivalry game.
That's the big one. Yeah.
Where'd you play that one?
We played that at Riverview.
Yeah,
and we had an interesting season. Started really well. Kings were the team to beat. Started really well. Then we drew with Scots.
Yeah.
Then we lost to Kings, but Kings had already lost to Riverview, so we needed to win that game to claim the title because we only played 5 or 6 games. We didn't have semifinals or anything.
They used to be my first 2 years was just straight 6, and then they went into you play home and away for the final year.
Yeah, and they were just better than us.
Yeah.
Riverview had a really good team, and my sort of lasting memory of that is the game was in the balance late in the game, and we were defending our own line and the Riverview Old Boys were right behind us, and
Yep.
then they scored, and just the abuse, friendly abuse being hurled at us from behind us, that'll always stick with me. But, I went from that where there was maybe 10,000, say 5 to 10,000 people at every game, to then playing at 10:30 in the morning on a cow paddock.
Bit different.
A little bit different. Yeah. You start to, question's not the right word, but you kind of need to have a love, an intrinsic sort of love for the game to play on that cow paddock when 12 months earlier.
That's where you came. I remember my first game after school, I did like a Clarkie, who works at the Brumbies, he was part of the Australian Schoolboys, and he had this connection with Hartbury College in England. And he said, do you want to do 4 months gap year? And I said, yeah, cool. So I went there. I remember my first game was in Wales against our rival, Cardiff Met. I don't think I saw one blade of grass. It was rainy. It was mud. That's the first time I've seen a maul.
We
weren't mauling in high school.
Yeah.
Ruck speed was very slow. And box kicking, I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, box kicking. That's not something I saw until I got to New Zealand either.
So I was like, that was where I'm in a different world now. This is not the rugby I was playing 2 months ago.
It's just interesting. A lot of my friends were playing shoot shield in Sydney, and even in Colts you get a decent crowd, and you're always on a pretty good field. At the bottom end of New Zealand in Dunedin.
I can imagine.
We played on some pretty nefarious.
Yeah, there'd be some tough grounds there.
And tough clubs. We used to go out and play against this club, Tyree.
Yep.
So we're sort of out of town, and they were mostly. There were some guys who lived in town who played for that club.
Yep.
But mostly from that region and mostly working on the farm.
Yep.
Just a different level of strength.
Yeah.
Farm
strength.
Yeah, you always came out of that game bruised and battered.
Yeah.
They were a great club.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about your time in schoolboy footy. Trinity Grammar, right?
Yep.
And you guys won a premiership.
We won the premiership in 2011.
Is that the last time that's happened?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Long time now. Nearly 22 years, 23 years.
Yeah. Wow. And any other players of note in your ilk in that side?
Pat Seo, brother of Scott Seo.
Yeah, Scotty.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he did a few years in stud frontier.
Yep.
But he's given up rugby now. Cameron Orr, he's a prop.
Yeah, front row.
Tars and Rebels. Sorry, he's now in the MLR.
Yep.
And that's about it.
Yep.
A few other boys played sort of shoot shield stuff.
Yep.
Post school and gave it up. But yeah, we just clicked that year. We just had a good team. Had good school teacher, coach. So yeah, it was just a really fun year of footy. It's when footy's not serious, I guess, or how you make it serious. It's just sort of you're playing with your mates. So it was just fun times.
Yeah, I think we have a tendency to sometimes take the game a bit too seriously, or take it very seriously. And at the end of the day, it is a game.
Yeah.
So it should be fun. I reflect on my time at school and even my early days in Otago, where I was supposed to be studying and I was doing very little of that.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I remember the footy being fun, and I remember my lifestyle being a lot of fun.
Yep.
Yeah. And I reflect very fondly on that, because there was a period in my life where the game took over my life, and I had to really decide whether I wanted to continue my involvement.
Yeah.
And I had to go back to that kind of why.
Yeah.
Why this game?
Yeah.
Why am I doing it, and why does it keep coming back at me?
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through that. It's when the pressures come through, life pressures or internal pressures of where you want to be as a rugby player. And then you, like you said, you have to find that why, or get back to that place to understanding the perspective of it's just a game, and you got to enjoy it as that. Do you have a why? Like, when you sort of think about the game, is there an aspect or certain aspects where you go, this is why I play? Yep. I play the game of rugby because, or why I enjoy it, because it challenges me mentally and physically. Back to the game of chess, it stimulates me mentally, and that's why I really enjoy it. Like, it's like solving puzzles, different pitches, different things every week, different defence systems. So that's why I enjoy the game of rugby itself. I play because also the passion my parents instilled the game into me. They had a passion for it, introduced me to the game. So that connection I have with my parents and the passion we have for rugby is also why. And then we had these pictures for the Brumbies, and one of the pictures is me as like a 5-year-old. And that's my why, because that kid would die to be where I am now. And sometimes when I complain about certain things, like he would have given anything to be a professional rugby player, and no matter what happened. So I always try to think of him when in tough times. So yeah, they're probably my 3 whys and why I do things.
I think they're the best ones I've had so far. Give you a big ups for that. And I think it's really interesting. Those are incredible whys. You know, even now, my dad will listen to me on a podcast or whatever, and I'll get a phone call from him, and we'll go through it like it's a game.
Yeah,
he used to do that for me, no matter where I was, where I was playing. If he could get some footage or whatever, he would watch it, and we would go through that. So that connection to my father was really important to me as well. But it's really interesting that little kid, that idea of the little kid. That's something that I've actually used in parenting. Yeah, is listening to that little Liam. Yeah, and how he's feeling with whatever my son or my daughter is going through. Yeah, and really listening to him. Yeah, and acting on what he's saying rather than what my head is saying. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's such a powerful, having a connection to your inner child is such a powerful way to give you perspective.
No, definitely. Because I think we make it a bit too complicated as adults sometimes.
Yeah, so some lived experiences, I guess, probably make it a bit harder at times. One more thing before you go, am I correct? I read on your bio today that you have some Chilean heritage. Yeah. So my partner is Chilean.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My dad is Hungarian Chilean or Chilean. Yep. And then my mum's Kiwi, Cook Island. So it's always had a mixed bag growing up. So the Debreczeni last name comes from Hungary. Yep. But my grandmother is from South America, Chile. So that's probably the side I grew up with, that and the Kiwi side. Yep. Because my grandfather passed away, the Hungarian side. Yep. So it wasn't until recently my dad has sort of reconnected with that side of the family. Yeah, okay. So grew up with Chilean aunties and grandmas.
Yeah, wow. Have you been to Chile?
Yep. Yeah. Been once when I was younger for about 7 weeks. Yeah. Went to see my grandma's family and where she grew up when she passed away. So we went over as all my uncles and aunties. Yeah, cool. It was awesome.
Yeah. Do you speak any Spanish?
No, that's still my struggle. Like all my cousins. Yeah. Like angry at our aunt or our parents for like they just didn't.
It's funny. So my partner speaks fluently, but she grew up. She did the first 6 years of her life in Chile, and then they moved out here to Australia when she was 6, and then English became her first language, but she still speaks fluently. Yeah. Most of her family do. But it's really interesting. A lot of people I know who have bilingual parents or bilingual grandparents, for whatever reason, their parents or aunties and uncles didn't speak to them in that language. They spoke to them in English, and they just never picked it up.
Yeah, I think my grandma didn't want my uncles and aunties to teach us, or she wanted us to be English. Yeah. Like she didn't want us to struggle if we just spoke Spanish the whole time. Yep. So all my uncles and aunties, my dad speaks fluent Spanish. Yep. And a couple of the grandchildren just have a few words here and there.
It's funny, when the Rugby World Cup was on, I had 2 horses in the race. Yeah. And Wallabies were number 1. But I really had a good time watching the Chileans.
Yeah, passionate people. Yeah. Similar to the Argentinians. Yeah. Like South American blood is very passionate.
100%. And I've been to Chile once as well. Yeah. And we didn't go to the game. Colo Colo were playing in Santiago. So there's sort of two clubs in Santiago, soccer clubs. Yep. Colo Colo and Universidad de Chile. Yep. And we didn't go to the game because Katz, my partner's uncle, was like, you don't want to go.
I've been to that game. Oh, there you go. And it is crazy.
So you don't want to go. It's nuts.
I was with my uncles. Yeah. And they were like sort of making sure that we stayed in the right parts, and we didn't celebrate when other teams scored.
Yeah, yeah. But watching the Chileans at the World Cup, I'd been to when when I was in there, there's a Viña del Mar Sevens.
Yep.
So it's used, they have like the Challenger Series now on the Sevens circuit, and it was used as a way to qualify for teams to qualify for Hong Kong.
Yep.
And Chile played in that, and I was watching that, and they beat the South Africans, and I was like, oh, these guys actually go all right. And then I would keep an eye on them and whatever. But seeing them at the World Cup, I was like, oh, these guys actually are they're not as far away as it would seem, as you would think. And I was really hopeful that a few of those guys would pick up contracts in the US or in Europe, because there were a couple of really good players. Yeah. Yeah. Is that something you've ever thought about?
Yes, I've thought about the Chilean side a little bit.
Yep.
But it just sort of impacts a few things around contracting elsewhere.
Yep.
But yeah, if the opportunity presents one day, maybe put on the Condors.
Put on the Condors red,
the Condors jersey.
Hey, this was fun, Jack. I really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks a lot for having me. It's been awesome.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
That's it for this week of the Give 'em Rugby podcast. I'd like to thank everyone for listening or watching. Please don't forget to like us on social media. We're at Give 'em Rugby. We'd also really appreciate a subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts from. If you really like the show, we'd love a review, because that helps permeate the podcast across all of the platforms and will show the podcast to others who like rugby. Finally, don't forget to join the Give 'em Rugby Club, where we're going to be giving away exclusive content, early episodes, access to guests, access to me. So please don't forget to head over to giveemrugby.com and sign up for the Give 'em Rugby Club, which is just $5 a month. Finally, thank you to our sponsors, and we look forward to the next episode next week.
Look, my line, I get ready. Feeling too trippy, get it cracking like a